Is live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I am Christiana Ellis,
I'm Mike McTeen.
and tonight we're going to talk about the last two episodes, 10 and 11, depending on how you count them, but the most recent two, and we're in a little bit of a rush just because scheduling has been really challenging this month. But hopefully, for the remainder of the season, at least, I'm hoping that we should be able to be a little bit more regular. But in the meantime, how you doing, Mike?
Good.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, it's two episodes. It is two episodes,
Yeah.
but it is three eliminations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
It.
then
Yeah.
I think we only have like two or three episodes left after this. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're at this most recent one is at 11, and the typical schedule is that we have 13 and then a finale.
I thought the most recent was 10, but I don't.
Uh,
Maybe I'm. Maybe you're counting one. The double one is two, and I'm not.
I
But either way,
don't.
same.
Well, okay. I don't know.
Two more.
I am counting the double one as two.
Yes. So
So
anyway, we're in the same place. Two more, and then
yeah.
the finale is what we're looking at.
Right, right. So we're coming up on it for sure. We are
Yes.
entering Endgame. Um, where it's really everyone is now in a position of having to seriously be thinking about not just how do they survive the next vote, but what's the plan.
Right.
How do they navigate not only to that final tribal council but then win. Everyone needs to be thinking that way at this point. And so we lost three power players in this couple of episodes. We lost, so there are no remaining returning players, although any of them could get back in with from Edge of Extinction, but none remaining in the main game. And then War Dog lost in this most recent one.
Yep. And I mean, a lot of this has to do. I mean, I know they obviously edit it this way a little bit, but I still think some of the immunities were absolutely critical to the way these dominoes fell here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Aurora's is absolutely in the first episode.
Yeah.
Was the key to all of this because once they decided to once they broke that former player bond, with getting David, well, then Wentworth just became a nice, easy next target.
Mm-hmm.
And then now everybody's like wound up, like going for threats. So it really comes down to Rick and War Dog, and Rick wins immunity, so War Dog becomes next. Now, obviously, there's some nuances through all of that, but again, Aurora taking away the easy vote and getting everybody to start going after threats
Mm-hmm.
just kind of launched this.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was. I agree 100%. I feel like a game where Aurora didn't win that particular immunity challenge turns out very differently, because So we opened what I'm calling episode 10, the first of what the ones we're talking about tonight. We opened it with Aurora very aware and emotional that she felt like she kind of blew up her game with the whole "you're spilling the beans" bit in that tribal council, where she kind of, the way she was talking about her alliance and Julia together, kind of tipped everybody off. There was a revolt of original plans, and Julia got voted out, leaving Aurora kind of with no allies, it would seem. And certainly lots of people planning to target her.
Yep.
You have a loose alliance of War Dog, Kelly, Lauren, Ron, Gavin, and Julie, all planning to vote for her. But I will say about Aurora that there was a bit here where she talked about growing up, the feeling like she has no friends left on the island, and remembering that, like, but I can deal with that because I grew up in the foster care system. I didn't really have friends then either, and I have to say, like, Aurora has been a little bit of a cipher in many parts of this season. Like, it's been hard to really get a handle on who she is as a person.
Yeah.
But that really went a long way for me in terms of kind of feeling like, oh yeah, okay, I can kind of click with her now. And I'll actually just briefly mention too that I had just seen Shazam, in which, if anyone who's not aware, the character Billy Batson, who becomes the superhero in Shazam, is a foster kid, and the movie features a foster home, lots of foster kids. It's an important theme and element of the movie, and so I was kind of had that in my head. So I think connecting those dots even added more to me saying, "Oh, maybe I kind of like Aurora," even though she certainly blew it in the tribal council that preceded this one.
Yeah, she certainly did. But you're right. I started to like her through this and the next episode. I mean, just as we saw her more and got to learn a little bit about her toughness and grittiness and survival instinct. Kind of not survival like surviving on the island, but like surviving the votes.
Yeah,
it really became really interesting. So
right. And so we jumped to an endurance challenge where everyone had to. This was the one where they had to like stand in a crouch for a long time, and they had the alternative of they could sit out for pizza and beer, and it was Lauren, Victoria, Kelly, and Ron that chose to sit out. This was also one where at least the editing really made it look like a butterfly made War Dog go out, because we see it like land on his face and stuff, and it's like crawling all over him and flying around, and that's right when he goes out.
That is true.
But we also had the great bit with Rick right before he goes out, because it was the final three was David, Aurora, and Devons, and we had Devons do his da da dun dun dun. This sucks, like his little newscaster thing.
Right.
That was pretty fun, but his joke distracted him enough that he went out very shortly after. But I was surprised at this point that David had really been doing much better in challenges than I think anyone sort of gave him credit for. Like, he wasn't winning any, but he was like close. He was like in the final 2 or 3 in like the last several challenges. But in the meantime, though, Aurora wins, which changes everything. Yeah. That was weird. I heard you say something, but your video didn't move for a second. But I think it's fine now.
Weird, little...
had a ripple effect.
Yeah, all I was doing was echoing that. Yes, that David is a good competitor. I mean, that's clearly, he dug out for these. But yeah,
and Devons too, which is not like a recent surprise, but I think we wouldn't have pegged him as such a competitive challenge player early in the season. He kind of had a little extra tummy more than we usually associate with the people who really excel in challenges. Which just goes to show you, you can't always tell. But in the meantime, let's see. Everyone plans are disrupted because they can't target Aurora. I think we can probably not belabor the point too much, because we go to that first tribal council 15 minutes into the episodes, which is pretty much an immediate tip-off that we're talking about a double elimination episode or something unusual happening.
Yeah.
My first thought actually was that it might be, the second half of the episode might be the next opportunity for an Edge of Extinction person to come back. It does occur to me, though, that the reason that we might need more double elimination episodes in this season is because they're letting people who get voted out come back.
That's true, because we know at least one is already back, and we expect.
Yeah. Froze on me again.
I think we probably just expect only one more. Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. What we heard was we've had one back, and I think we're expecting.
I was going to say we expect a minimum of one more back. I don't think it'll be more than that, but we know at least one more will come back.
That seems the most likely. Yeah. So in the meantime, we're at that tribal council. David and Rick kind of knew they were in trouble, but they're doing the best they can. They want to target War Dog because of that trio of Lauren, Kelly, and War Dog. And, it's David makes a valiant effort, but I think it's clear in hindsight that he knew what was going to happen. Um, he knew he was getting voted out. And I think, the only other vote for War Dog was probably Devon's, because Devon's has kind of made a whole point of he's playing a loyal game now.
Yep.
Actually, I didn't double check the actual vote, so I could be wrong there, but I think that's what it was.
It's correct. Yeah, everybody but Rick voted for David.
Yeah, yeah. So,
they kind of set it up though, where like Julie and Ron were the swing votes, and once they decided, then Aurora and Victoria just came along with them.
Right.
That's how they made it look.
Yeah, I think that's all the more reason that I think David knew. I think it was a case of, they were trying to build enough numbers, but it just looked like it wasn't going to work, and so nobody was willing to, it's like, why be in a minority vote if it's not going to make any difference? Just like, might as well add to the pile. So in David leaves and he says, no hard feelings, but I'm going to crawl back in. And sure enough, at the edge of extinction, he got to observe that it was an interesting dynamic with everyone else having been there and deprived and cranky and angry about getting voted out, whereas he's like, he didn't want to be here, but he's still in game mode. He feels like he doesn't feel in some altered state of the game. It's like he's just shown up. He's not deprived yet. He's just there, still playing as far as he's concerned.
Right.
And so good for him. It occurred to me that he might have the disadvantage of not having gotten to know the surroundings very well yet compared to the others.
Also true, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, he still figured out the clue first, finds the advantage, and sends the advantage to Devons, who uses it to win. This was the second immunity challenge where he had to balance the balls in the little dimples.
Right, and Devon's got one less ball. So
right, and so although Aurora and Ron were kind of close enough to add a little suspense, this is a substantial advantage in this particular challenge. Only having to do it 4 instead of 5 is a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he wins. Now the question for everyone else is like, okay, well, are we going back to Aurora then? Now that she's not immune this time, and there's this power trio, in theory, is thinking Aurora could be the easy vote, but this is where War Dog thinks it's time to finally make a move on Kelly Longworth. And, I wrote in my notes Kelly Longworth because that is what he said, even though that is not her name.
That is correct. But you can see, like, the whole reason that he kind of was able to get some momentum here is because she became the last returning player.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that's a great observation.
So it kind of, that whole thing, Aurora, again, winning back that last one, just started this whole cycle. And then, what's mind-blowing to me, though, is, through all of these machinations that they came through, that Kelly just still didn't, just left with her idol in her pocket.
Yeah. I was surprised too, especially but then again, I mean, there have been several previous votes where we thought maybe she should play it, but then she didn't, and we kind of can't help but say, well, I mean, she guessed right, but this time she didn't, so.
True.
Yeah, but at the same time, it goes to show, that the temptation to want to hold on to those idols, it could make you a little bit overconfident potentially. But she seemed so paranoid generally that I don't know. I mean, but it's easy for us after the fact, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It just seemed like there was so much going on, and like we talked about earlier, David seemed to know, even though they hadn't told him that he was going to be. And so the fact that then on the next vote, they were able to completely blindside her. Just, I
Yeah.
mean, it sort of surprised me. I mean, it's, I guess, good on them because she
Hmm.
didn't even seem to think like she needed it. You know,
Yeah.
like it wasn't like she was guessing. She felt confident. You
Hmm.
know.
Yeah. I suppose it might have been a case where she felt like if it's a sort of thing where if she plays it, then she's the next target, is maybe what she's thinking. And so, like, all the more reason to not play it unless you absolutely critically need to, and if it's still uncertain.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I mean, I think that's what she was thinking. But like I said, they gave her no inkling to just say, you know what, it's
Mhm.
not worth it. Let me
Right.
just stay.
Well, and I think we probably have to give credit to War Dog too, that I think not only was it probably the right time to make that move, but he apparently managed to sell it to Kelly well enough to have her not play her idol.
Yep.
And so, good for him, even though obviously, his good luck doesn't last. And so we had. Hmm? Oh, are you just agreeing?
No, I just agreed. Yep.
Yeah. So uh, this is where we have Aurora getting told about the plan to vote for Kelly, but kind of, I want to say to her credit, it's an unfortunate situation where technically she is being told the truth, but at this point she sort of is rightly suspicious that if she was
Right.
actually the target, they would give her a decoy, right? And so they would
Yep.
tell her, "Oh yeah, it's going to be Kelly," so that she plays along, and so she's feeling a little paranoid, which so good for her, except that technically, the odds are against it, but it is nonetheless true that they were telling her the truth. Um, so she decides to try to, as an act of good faith, give her extra vote to Ron, which is kind of complicated because, on the
Mm-hmm.
one, I think she's probably assuming if they plan to vote for me and they're all in agreement, my extra vote's not going to do anything. And so the best possible thing that it could do for me right now is to help me have some allies instead of having everyone opposed to me.
Right.
So in that sense, she had to do something with it. And without some sort of an additional plan, it doesn't do her any good. So I don't know that it was a bad thing to make this offer to Ron, even though he kind of immediately admits to the camera that he's almost tempted to vote her out right after she gives it to him, just almost like a sort of a perverse, like, because he could thing.
Right. And then you can keep it.
Yeah. But at the same time, he's feeling like he's torn about, like, is it the right thing to make this big move that War Dog's talking about? Would be easy to just go ahead and go after Aurora, but then War Dog's still, or but then Kelly's still in the game, and I think that people are probably at this point, a lot of them are not so much worried about Aurora as someone likely to win. So I think he must have just made that choice based on, why would you not take out a big target when you can?
Right.
So we get to that second tribal council, where Devons talks about, the time that you need to beware in this game is when everything seems to come too easy. Like, everything's working out just the way you planned. You have lots of allies, you're safe. And, it's the thing about that is that it's often true, but, like, not universally true, right? Because it's one of those things where anytime someone is voted out by surprise, it's likely that that's what happened. But there are also plenty of times where someone feels confident and safe and they're correct and are not blindsided. because they were actually right about what was happening. Yeah. So there's discussion, blindsides, are they addictive? Are people like doing blindsides just to do a blindside because they think that making a move is like the way to impress the jury? Um, and so there's discussion about, hey, how many idols have been played? And, so there's lots of back and forth. And ultimately, though, War Dog's insurgency votes out Kelly. And, she is certainly surprised. This is a good example of a blindside where she maybe knew that there were people targeting her. But if she had any inkling that she was actually going to get voted out, she would have played her idol.
Right.
So she was playing the odds, but guessed wrong. And we got a bleeped holy blank War Dog from Aubrey on the jury. So that pretty much covers that the previous week's episode.
Right, and I would just say on the topic of blindsides, I think this one was not one, to do a blindside just to do a blindside or because people wanted to make a move. I mean, she's a legit threat who, if she knew about it, either would have played an idol or even if they didn't know if she had an idol, is good enough to potentially work her way out of it. This was a correct choice in a blindside, I think, in this particular one.
Yeah, I think it was good for them pulling it off for sure.
Yeah.
And if War Dog hadn't then gotten himself voted out afterwards, I was certainly looking at his insurgency against Kelly as like, he's getting it done. He's doing what he always kind of said he was going to do, which was stay loyal until you're ready to take someone else out, and make that move, and he did, but couldn't hang on to it.
Mistake, coming right into the next episode of underestimating Gavin.
And it is that it's strange because on the one hand, it's always a dilemma. When you're planning a betrayal like that, you always have to worry about. You see it happen both ways. You see times where people are mad because they're left out, but you also see when they tell one person that they shouldn't, and that person spills the beans, and then the whole plan's ruined.
Yeah.
So you really can't, there's no definitive one way. You have to really just try to read the person. But I think War Dog really...
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that it was the leaving Gavin out of the vote that was the issue. It was how they handled the damage control of that.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Yeah, so talk more about that. I was getting to that, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because what ends up happening is, Gavin, as people do, confronted War Dog and said, "Why was I excluded? Hey, if I had known the numbers had switched, I would have been down." Which, I get where War Dog's coming from and being frustrated of like, oh yeah, if you knew you were voting the wrong way, you would vote the other way.
Yeah.
But he does just kind of start to bark at Gavin, like, because I think he's and this is why I said he underestimates him. I think he's now decided that, part of, not only did we leave you out, but you're kind of an inconsequential person now.
Yeah.
And that was a severe error in judgment, and also the way that he talked to Gavin was just kind of crappy.
Yeah.
As a person, and the way that he talked down to him and, just wouldn't let him get a word in. And, Gavin even said he felt like he was being talked to like a dog.
Yeah.
And he did not appreciate that.
Well, and beyond that, like he actually made it kind of personal.
Yeah.
Like his criticisms were not even just like, well, I disagreed with what you were doing strategically and I didn't want to risk it. It was like, I disapprove of not only the way you're playing the game, but kind of you as a person. And,
right.
It's, so it was not cool. Gavin did not appreciate it, and it sent him promptly going to the others, Ron and Victoria, and saying, I don't like the way he talked to me. I think you guys feel that he does that. I'm not wrong that he does that to everybody every now and then.
Yep. And I thought the way that Gavin navigated this was actually pretty well done.
Mm-hmm.
He he sort of threw himself to the other group and said, "Hey, like I'm just I'm so frustrated with him that I'm just not even going to work with him. You just tell me what to do and I'm on board."
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as he saw an opening, he started to kind of whip up the votes against
Mm-hmm.
War Dog. Once Devins, who he didn't want to vote, but he was like, "Hey, this is what I told them, and for this vote, like I'm just going to go along with them. That's what I told them I would do. I'm going to just kind of stay under the radar, see what happens." And then as soon as he won immunity, Gavin starts to kind of chalk it up, and that's where War Dog's big mistake was. He underestimated him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so we have Ron continuing to kind of straddle the fence, and it hasn't come back to bite him yet.
Not
Um,
yet.
he knows that he kind of needs to mend fences with Julie because they ended up voting on opposite sides that last time.
Yeah, this
Julie,
is an example of how to actually handle speaking to someone who got left out of the vote.
yeah, and Julie says she's still with him. I have to say, I mean, this is not a personal criticism of Julie, but it does seem like she's not super engaged strategically right now. She's kind of a little bit of a loose cannon. Like, in the sense, not that she is passive, but that she is kind of untethered. She doesn't seem to be responding to the same currents that everybody else is.
Well, yeah, and I guess a little bit of that is that recently she was kind of like working with Ron was sort of her identity.
Yeah.
And then Ron went and did his own thing, and she didn't really, that kind of left her with no identity. And so when he talks to her, she's like, well, yeah, of course I'll come back with you. But then she starts to reconsider,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't really have anywhere to go with it. And so that's why there's sort of the awkward, like, when she just kind of grabs Lauren later and is like, hey, maybe we should just get out War Dog, which again wasn't a wrong thing to bring up. It was just sort of like kind of thrown together,
Mm-hmm.
not really, there wasn't really much behind it other than like you and I are both here on this reward trip and I'm supposed to talk strategy at a reward trip. So Lauren, here's a strategy, like it was very like you said, kind of untethered, not a lot behind it other than just sort of existing.
Right. Yeah, so like her confessional is that, she's basically saying, I sincerely have no hard feelings against Ron. I think he made a good move. And she kind of weakly says, well, I wish I could have been in on it. But I mean, essentially, she's praising him for a move that he made without telling her he was going to. So, it's fine. In the meantime, though, Devins is very happy to have had Kelly go out.
Yep.
He's kind of connecting with Ron and War Dog, saying they're the three with a resume, and now that the returning players are gone, they're the ones who people are going to target, so they need to kind of stick together.
Yes, and I think this is where, kind of for me, the final turning point and really realizing that Devins is an incredible threat to this game because he, although I guess we realized later that other people have recognized that too, which then flips it, makes it harder for him. But the fact that he recognized what we see with the, the ability of watching it with the edit from our own home, like not being involved in it, and he picked up on that exact thing is like, hey, that's how those two got toppled is once you broke it, and so we three should be together because if one of us goes, then the other two could be next.
Yeah.
We don't want to have that same thing where people like get that going. We kind of got to put the brakes on that, like what's the getting threats thing.
Right.
So.
Although, I mean, one of the things that did occur to me, by the end of this episode is that this is not the first time that Devins ends up staying loyal to someone who then gets voted out and him having to say to them, it wasn't me that flipped. Like, this is at least the second time that exact scenario has happened.
Yeah, I believe it happened with David as well.
It happened before that for sure, too.
Yeah, so there's multiple times, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he kind of ends up on the wrong side of the vote pretty frequently. And I think we can also be pretty confident that he probably would have been voted out a couple of times, except for winning challenges. But of course, he did win those challenges, so it's not like cheating or something. It's
And he
just,
got himself back in.
yeah,
So
exactly. It may actually be that he's kind of relying on the idea that that's his resume, you know, is that I got voted out and made my way back in and that sort of thing, and having
and
that
I
be the
stuck with,
narrative. Yeah.
yep, and I stuck with who I needed to, even when it was, like, hey, War Dog, I didn't vote for you because I promised you that I didn't want one of the threats to go,
Right.
you know? And so I stuck with my vote.
Yeah. Could be. So let's see. We have. Sorry, I scrolled too far down in my notes there. Ron
Reward
is.
challenge.
Hmm?
Oh, I thought we were at the reward challenge, but moving on.
Yeah, just about. I think the last bit about Ron is that he's kind of playing everyone's ally, um, and being this perpetual swing vote.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have a feeling that's going to come to bite him eventually.
Eventually, probably. So, yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen plenty of final tribal councils where someone just gets exoriated for you always told everyone what they wanted to hear. Was any of it ever real? But I don't know. Sometimes those people also win. So, the reward challenge we have, swimming to the platform, then you swim under the platform, and then you're getting, uh, puzzle pieces or something. I don't know. So there's a blue team wins. It's Julie, War Dog, Rick, and Lauren. But Gavin is happy to have time to spend with Ron and Aurora.
They were rings, not puzzle pieces.
Huh?
But they
Okay,
were
rings. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't take my note. I didn't take a note of that part. I was just trying to remember.
Throwing the rings onto the pegs.
Right, that's right. So Gavin is happy to have time with Ron and Aurora to plot his assault against War Dog. And this is where we have some Edge of Extinction also, where Kelly's kind of commiserating with Joe. She's feeling bummed because she didn't trust her gut in terms of voting for the idol. And then we have Reem continuing to do that cranky mom archetype, where at the same time that she's the one who actually says the most angry stuff, she also kind of explicitly phrases it as, I'm the one who is expressing this emotion in a healthy way because we're all going through an understandable grieving process, and so it's really all fine, but I'm the one who's going to yell at you for a little while.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, that whole sort of act is kind of growing on me. It would probably be hard to live with, but I'm amused by it on a TV show.
Yeah, I guess. It's a little frustrating to me to watch, because it feels like so, like she just doesn't even realize that, she's being kind of a bully, and she's excusing it. I don't know. It was just weird.
I don't know. I mean, I always felt like it was it was sort of just this it was always kind of this all bark and no bite sort of thing, where it's like the barking includes an explanation that she's not really going to bite. She just wants to bark.
Fair. That's an interesting way to put it. I like that. Funny.
So in the meantime, though, I'm generally just feeling like Edge of Extinction as a concept for the show is really kind of this really strange dynamic, because just how people act when they're on Edge of Extinction versus how they act when they're in the main game is different, and the chemistry is different. It's interesting.
Yeah, because they have different. I mean, although I guess they are. It's weird because they are jury members, in fact, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you do have to be considerate of that, as opposed to yeah, the dynamics are different in that you don't need their vote to get back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to beat them to get back in the game. But if you do manage to get back in the game and get to the end, like
Yeah.
they could be on the jury.
Mm-hmm. So back at camp, Ron mentions something about having not eaten in 11 days, which is like, I always feel weird when people say that because, like, he says that, but then there's actually an argument about how much rice to cook, like, seconds later in the episode. Like,
Yeah.
that's what he and Aurora argue about. So, like, if he means that he's just not eating much, like everybody's not eating much, then that's one thing. But, like, I don't follow the logic there. But in an event, he's happy to kind of be strategizing with everyone. Um, Lots of people are talking about being happy to target Devons, but Gavin is pushing War Dog. And Ron wants to have Aurora continue to trust him, so he gives her the vote back, but they're just butting heads. They're, friction on a personal level. I couldn't help but notice, though, that he seemed more worked up about it than she did.
Yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm. So the winners got the spa day. We got some amusing sequences with War Dog and Devons rubbing mud on each other.
That was. I mean, it was funny.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we have Devons getting to. He's a little dismissive and perhaps a bit overconfident in his appraisal, where he doesn't feel like he has to worry too much about strategy while on this reward because he feels like Lauren and Julie are kind of just going wherever the wind blows, so they're not too focused on strategy, so he doesn't need to worry about it while he's there. And then, of course, we cut to them, Julie and Lauren, in the mud discussing on whether it should be War Dog or Devons that goes out next. So, yeah. But that brings us to the immunity challenge, where Devons makes that question, moot by making himself immune again. And, hey, good for him. And there you go. So everyone else had been talking about, well, is it Devons or War Dog? And can't be Devons, so it's War Dog.
Yep. Well, the other thing that I liked, about both of these challenges, we didn't really talk about it on the first one. I liked that, Aurora was really strong in both of them, because I kind of want to see her get a shot at like getting something back together in this game. Like I think it's probably too long gone for her to win.
Yeah, yeah.
But I want to see her kind of go out hard, and she did. I mean, she was the only one that swam under that whole platform on the first one, and didn't come up for the breath, to grab the rings. Then on this one, she was second to Devons, just that couldn't quite get the puzzle together correctly, but was there at the same time, started the puzzle at the same time as him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to see her kind of do well, and not just give in to her fate,
I agree.
And obviously it's worked for her because now that these guys are starting to turn on each other, she's come out of the crosshairs a little bit. So
right, yeah, and I think you and I are pretty much exactly on the same page with her. That we kind of like her more now that we know her a little better. Seems nice. She's certainly a competitor in the challenges, but there's just kind of an air about her that seems like she's not. No one wants her to win, unless she pulls off something really impressive between now and the end.
yep. So.
Yeah. So in any event, she knows she's kind of had a target on her back for a while, though. She knows she's potentially in trouble. She, more than anyone else, or at least she expresses it more than anyone else, is aware that Ron is really playing both sides. Yeah. I have in my notes here that there was a very cool long exposure shot of the stars where, we see them streaking across the sky in a circle. Not really related to the game at all, but it was just cool. So that brings us to the tribal council. Gavin goes ahead and brings up his personal criticism right off the bat with calling out War Dog for talking at people. There's a weird, or not weird, I guess, not, but there's a moment here where War Dog's talking about big threats, and people are making big moves. You got to take out big threats, and then he kind of says, like how Ron and I targeted Kelly, and Probst is kind of, oh yeah, so I see how you just dragged Ron into the cage with you there, to to split the blame, so it's not so obvious that you are the big threat that you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And that there's a discussion amongst everybody of the careful balance between wanting to impress the jury but not make yourself too large a target before the end. There's some discussion about the two sides of I want to go with you to the end, because on the one hand you need the loyalty, but on the other hand it might mean that they're not impressed with you and they think they can beat you. So, yeah. But it's. I wonder if War Dog knew, because it seems to me like he maybe could have known, because this is. But like, what is he going to do about it?
Right.
I mean, all he can do is kind of try to keep pushing his whole piece. Although I don't know. I mean, Rick kind of again with the it wasn't me, like. That seems like unnecessary unless it was at least some degree of surprise.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't considered that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the jury, Kelly was thrilled. It's like, they got revenge for me.
Which, yeah, I thought that was kind of a interesting way to take that, as like that was what they were doing.
Yeah.
When that's not what they were doing.
Well, it occurred to me that you could take it both ways, right? It's not, on the one hand, it could mean that they were mad about Kelly being voted out, and so they voted him out as like retribution. But I think what she probably actually meant was, I wanted revenge and they did it for me. I wanted revenge against War Dog, and now they've voted him out, so I got what I wanted. But it's, yeah, in any event, it's, the first meaning that actually doesn't make sense actually did still feel nonetheless like that's what she was saying. In any event, though, War Dog goes out like a WWF wrestler. I think that's actually not the acronym anymore. It's WWE now, I guess. Just is like, yeah, you made the right decision, but I'll be back. That whole thing. But at the same time, like, there was sort of like that machismo in it, but not in a not in a really like mean-spirited way. It was more like, yeah, well, I knew I was a threat because I'm awesome, and that's why you voted me out. So it doesn't really actually hurt my feelings very much, And he's kind of not wrong, really.
It's true.
Yeah. Let's see. I have an incomplete note that I don't know what I was going to say at the end here. This what it is that showing the people go to make that choice with the the signs at the end, kind of like, who would ever, like, it's one thing to say if anyone ever chose to leave at that point, then the show cast them wrong, but especially now when they actually know what the choices are.
Right. Yeah, and especially knowing that they're coming this near the end, like what's another, at this point it's like a week.
Yeah.
That you have to deal with it.
Right. So
at the most. Yeah.
Yeah. So in any event, we see next time, let's see, that we're going to get the loved ones visits. Yep. Something about Ron giving an advantage to Rick, but it's expired somehow. Like, I kind of didn't follow that whole little bit.
I think it was one of those ones where like you have to use it at the next vote.
Oh, okay.
and so he could no longer use it, and so
Mm,
he's giving it to Rick with the idea that you can only use it at the next vote,
mm,
so that he'll use it and it will foil him or whatever.
yeah. Okay. Well, so uh, we had kind of a rapid fire journey through those last two episodes, but we're once again caught up. Hopefully, we'll stay on schedule. Uh, we'll do our best. But I am back in the States now, so hopefully, we're not struggling with 14 hours of time zone difference anymore. So
Yes, that helps.
it does help. So I think we'll go ahead and leave it there, and we'll be back. So try to survive until then.
Funny.